Now, tomorrow is Bipolar Awareness Day. The South African Depression Awareness Group wants to get people to have conversations that will not only help raise awareness, but also debunk the myths surrounding the mental illness. Now, we're joined in studio by psychiatrist Kim Laxton from Sadag. Kim, thanks very much for coming through. I think, first of all, talk to us briefly about this illness. Talk to us about how does one know if they suffer from bipolar, and are the symptoms easy to identify?
So it really is a privilege to be able to speak about bipolar, because it's something that really isn't spoken about in general conversation and usually left to the doctors to diagnose. But what I would like to say, though, is that for the patient or someone who might be experiencing symptoms that could be consistent with bipolar disorder, whether that be manic symptoms or depressive symptoms or the like, often it's more evident for people around them. So they notice changes in their mood, changes in their sleeping patterns, maybe an elevation of mood to the point that they may be doing things that are out of the ordinary for them, or they might be severely depressed, really wanting to spend much time on their own, not going to work, reclusive, for example. And if people around them are saying things that are concerning for the patient or the person that's experiencing these symptoms, it is important to go to their general practitioner just to get a proper history, to get a proper evaluation to see if they're not actually having bipolar or symptoms thereof.
You talk about raising awareness around or in order to help fight the stigma and also debunk the myths around this illness. What are some of these?
So one might recognize the conversation that goes, yes, she's bipolar. One might also recognize the statements like, is manic depressive. There's very little understanding what that actually means, and also it's often given very derogatory terms. So someone that's difficult in the office space, or someone that's reacting out of the ordinary at home, my mom's bipolar. And there really is a misunderstanding that bipolar, especially what we call bipolar 1 disorder, is a very serious illness. This is someone that is very sick and is not able to function within their requirements of every day. So the myths around that are, if you've got bipolar, in fact got it, or seemingly presenting with the symptoms, there's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with your personality. People must stay away from you. That really isn't the case. This is someone that's got external symptoms that are crying for help. Symptoms that require intervention and professional intervention. And I think there's a great need to embrace people with the symptoms early on, and people that have been suffering with the illness for years must be embraced by the public, their family, as well as the health professionals.
I noted with interest in your media alert that there is one gentleman, the black gentleman that's mentioned, who suffers from this, and his story is around perhaps a particular stigma that may be attached to black people who suffer from bipolar illness. The question there I would want to ask of you, Kim, is that, is there a particular label attached to black people who suffer from bipolar?
That is such an interesting question. I've worked both in the government sector as well as the private sector, and what is very interesting when I was working within the state, the meaning behind being diagnosed with a mental illness, very attached to things like the religious aspect and the cultural aspect, and the understanding that a lot of patients and their family members make, as well as their means of understanding the symptoms, is to relate it to a lot of the cultural and religious misunderstandings. And there is absolutely, definitely a stigma, although what is very encouraging is that with this type of bipolar awareness and the correct information being distributed to people that might be involved, for example, your traditional healers, for example, your church groups, there's an understanding that this, in fact, although we use religious and cultural mechanisms to treat people to gain their understanding of their illness, it is very important to identify that people like that need actual medical treatment. treatment and medical intervention as well. So there's an ongoing stigma. It's an ongoing fight, and certainly with South Africa being so multicultural, with lots of different languages and understandings, there is indeed a risk that we continually fight against when it comes to debunking myths and stigma with mental illness. Yeah.
Just finally, therefore, I'm aware that there is an online chat that will be taking place today. For those who may be keen to participate, give us just the details around when that chat will be about and how do they get in touch.
Okay, so Facebook Friday is something that Sadag has really been very involved in. They want people to have access to the correct information and to assistance, not just for them but for their family members. Facebook Friday generally is an online, you type in your questions essentially, and it occurs at 1 o'clock and then again at 7 o'clock in the evening, just for an hour from 1 until 2 and then from 7 until 8, where people can log on to the Facebook website of Sadag, S-A-D-A-G, and there is a healthcare professional that will be answering those questions. And it is a very exciting time because not only are you getting help one-on-one, but other people who might be afraid or don't perhaps have the time to actually go in and write those questions down can actually get access to help through that means as well. So that's happening today, and it's very important to think around the questions that you perhaps want to ask and actually ask them. Make your voice heard.
Well, thank you very much. It's really been an informative topic of discussion here. Thank you very much for your time. That was psychiatrist Kim Laxton from Sadag.